Okay, so we're on the last paragraph of the paper. So the last paragraph is different than conclusion paragraphs that you write for a typical essay. In a typical essay, you would review your main points, you would restate your thesis, and you would end with some kind of zinger. That's not the case for a poetry analysis paper. Instead, this is where you come to your conclusions about overall, was this poem good, mediocre, bad, ugly, whatever you want to call it. And it's more of a list with your opinion. But you always want to start with your rubric. And so it says you came to a clear, logical conclusion based on the evidence provided within the paper about the quality of each of the 5 poems by identifying each poem within the paragraph, thoroughly explaining the conclusion at which the writer arrived. So to paraphrase that, you're saying why it was good, bad, or mediocre, and whatever answer you put there, you need to make sure it makes sense based on what you've already said in the paper. So if you said they sucked at using the sound technique, then you shouldn't say it's a good poem overall, because a good poem means that it meets all 4 components at a high level. Instead, it would be a mediocre or a bad or ugly poem. So that's what that means. So I'm going to give, it doesn't say that I need a specific topic sentence, so I can get right into writing about my conclusions. Overall, after examining the 5 poems using this criteria, I can conclude that some were better than others. So I do kind of have a topic sentence here, but that just kind of gets me into the flow for this paragraph. So starting with Pied Beauty, I know that I said it was good for a unique idea. I said it was good for sound techniques, and I talked about the alliteration. I talked that it was good for universality because everybody can connect to the idea of beauty and what's ugly and what's beautiful. And for form and arrangement, I thought he did a good job with having one stanza be with the proper, beautiful one, and the other one being kind of the ugly, free verse one. So overall, I can say that that was a good poem. So going back to my spot, Pied Beauty was definitely a good poem because everything the poet did contributed to the universal message that there is beauty in the ugliness of the world. So I go back to my rubric, and I've got a conclusion, I've got the evidence, I've got my identification of the poem that I'm talking about, Pied Beauty, and I've explained how I got to that conclusion. So check off Pied Beauty, and I'm going to close that one out. Then I'm going to Amy Lowell's, and I said, skimming back through my paper here, that I didn't think that she had a unique idea, but all the other ones I thought were pretty good. Her sound techniques, and her universality, and her arrangement. So I'm going to say that this one was kind of that mediocre. Fireworks wasn't as good because the idea of people fighting and causing a scene isn't really new, but Lowell did use a good job of keeping the fireworks theme, motif I should say, going with her use of sound techniques and arrangement of the poem into short and long stanzas. So going back to my rubric, I double check. I've got my conclusion that it's not as good. I have my reasoning explained, and I've identified what poem I'm talking about. So I can check that one off and be done with that one. Tiger, Tiger, I said was not inventive in using the lamb to refer to God or Jesus or whatever I want to say. But the rest of it I said was pretty good. So I'm going to say that similarly, the tiger wasn't very inventive in using the lamb to refer to God because the Bible already does that, but had a very relatable idea of questioning where creation came from. Okay, so check back at my rubric. I've explained my conclusion. It matches what I already have in my paper. I've identified the poem and I've explained my conclusion, so I can close that one out. Then Daddy, I said I liked all the things about it, did a good job with everything except for the universality part because not everybody can connect to the Nazis. So while Daddy actually does do a good job of using creativity with the new ideas of hating her father for being a Nazi, not everyone can relate to that. So it's a mediocre poem. So going back to rubric, I've got my evaluation of the conclusion, I've got my reasoning for it, and I've identified the poem. Check, that one is done. And then the last poem, If by Rudyard Kipling. I don't remember exactly what all I wrote about it, so I'm just going to skim back through my poem paper, and I've got it's inventive. I've got that I don't like the sound technique though, so I can't say it's a good poem. And finally, if does a good job of connecting people to the idea of what it means to be an adult through its theme and sound techniques. But the first stanza's rhyme scheme is irritating to readers, which puts it down a notch from being a great poem. Double check my rubric. I've got my conclusion, I've got my reasoning, and it fits with what I've already put in my paper. So now I can say I am done with that poem also and done with that paragraph.